The best damn league show period is back. And of course, since Dom was on the last episode, this is yet another in the series of not Dom. Because I always joke that way because people always tried to imply, Zaboutine, that when I did my shows like The Crackdown and then this show, all the haters always do the same thing, mate. They all just go, we only watch it for the other guy and we don't even like you. In fact, you talk too much. You shouldn't interrupt or ever talk. But then I do notice, it doesn't matter who. It's always, I'm the only through line on all my shows. It's just me in this box. And it's a different person in the other box. I know people keep tuning in no matter who it is. And I actually think on this series, it's actually proven that I can work with a wide variety of people because I think for this show, I've picked a pretty good sort of spread of people. Everyone comes from like different regions, different specialties. I also think in some ways I've actually... I'll do, in English you will say, I toot my own horn on this one, Zaboutine. But I actually think, low-key, I've sort of redeemed you a bit because you actually had, unfortunately, a similar kind of career narrative, in my opinion, to people like maybe Yamato now or... who else? Giotto, where people just decided because of a specific coaching period, like, this guy sucks or he does nothing. And they were just hating on you all super hard and like trying to make it like no opinion you have is of any value. Whereas, first of all, if you ever get to know most of these coaching jobs that look bad from the outside, there's nearly always all nightmare problems inside that no one can talk about and issues with players and contracts. And sometimes, you didn't even ask for that player, but suddenly he's in your team or you get told to promote some academy. But there's a million reasons why it's all shit. And then I would also say, when you're doing a talk show, it's not really about like results in the real world. It's about theory crafting and coming up with interesting angles. So people will know you've had some very interesting takes. And I think for this episode, we're lined up for a perfect one, mate. There's so many crazy things have come out in this last week in LEC. Whereas actually, I feel like if this was a soap opera, all the other episodes, it's like those really old seasons of Game of Thrones, if you remember. They'd have all those episodes, bro, where it was just people talking, giving long monologues, like, and then when I was a boy, I did this, and well, what about this? Your father would, and then right towards the end of the season, they would just do that 9th episode where they'd just like kill like 4 characters, and they'd have like a dragon come in, and some guy come back from the dead, and you're like, what the fuck? But then after that, it just goes back like, and back down the pace again, just week to week to. So hopefully this week is one of those 9th episodes. We're going to go crazy on this one and really hit some big topics, right?
Yeah, it was the Crimson Wedding. I don't remember the name of the episode.
The Red Wedding.
There was pretty much, there was a lot of blood spilled on the LEC this week and the last week. It was pretty crazy, yeah.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. In some ways, Sam Matthews sends his regards. That's what happened after the upper bracket final there, guys. That would be the analogy in the League of Legends universe. But before we get into that, see, speaking of how messy the LEC is, obviously they should clean up their act and make themselves nice and clean and smell great with Mando, this product that's now sponsoring the best damn league show. So do you know what the most valuable thing in the world of European League of Legends is? Well, I can tell you the actual answer would be like basic competent draft priority, but that's a joke for later in the episode. But I'll tell you what the second most valuable thing in European League of Legends would be, and this joke's actually straight fire if you know European League of Legends pro players. It would actually be time. Because we all know they're terrible at managing their time. If you don't know, guys, they do grind the game, but at the same time, they're really inefficient. They just sat on their PC all day. By the way, another thing I could even hint at that I've heard behind the scenes in so many teams. There are teams where there'll be a pro player who doesn't make 10 minutes to have breakfast before scrims and just plays all the scrims without having any food. And then you just play with a guy and you're like, yeah, he's going to make great macro decisions, communicate well, like 4 hours in, you're losing games. So you can imagine how bad that is. Well, obviously, as gamers, managing your time, it's really difficult, isn't it? Anything extra that's complicated, you're just not going to do it, are you? And I have to say, I'm sorry for both pros and fans. One area, as male gamers in Europe, we're all doing a terrible job with is personal hygiene. I'll tell you that right now. Well, you know what? Managing and worrying about your body odor shouldn't take up so much time if you use a product like Mando, because I've actually been using the ones they've sent to me. I think actually it's lovely. It smells great. I use the soap on in the shower. It's like a nice big block, but it's not like it doesn't instantly all come off. It's one where you just rub a little bit of water on there, you get the nice little lather going. Actually seems like there's quite a lot of it. Very nice product. Doesn't feel like it's all horrible and chemically and stuff. So I've actually really enjoyed it. Also, interesting detail. This is where actually Mando is very different from other male products you might have used, which is it doesn't try to actually claim it's like stopping any smell or sweat or like covering it up. Because if anyone knows how that works traditionally, the joke, I remember there's a Seinfeld bit like this, where he said that when people had BO, they would just get that like stuff where it was like a cherry smell, but then you just have cherry BO, don't you? Like you still got the same smell behind it. You just got a smell on on top, which is actually weird, right? Well, here's the thing. Mando doesn't cover up odor after the fact with heavy fragrances like certain other deodorants. It stops odor at the source by blocking the bacteria on your skin from eating your sweat, which is the actual cause, apparently, of BO. And I'll tell you what, if you're in Europe right now, I'm in the Netherlands, someone else might be in Germany, or you're sweating right now, I'll tell you that. I will guarantee you that much. That's also how we are in Europe. All the Americans memeing on us for not having air conditioning in it. So I would say Mando is clinically proven to control odor for up to 72 hours. So give yourself the precious gift of time, and in this case, hygiene, and get yourself some Mando whole body deodorant. The special offer is new customers get $5 off their best-selling starter pack with the code BDLS, as you can see on screen, for Best Damn League Show at shopmando.com. By the way, as I said, the one I like is I quite like the soap for the shower. So their starter pack is perfect for new customers. It comes with a solid stick deodorant, cream tube deodorant, 2 free products of your choice like mini body wash and deodorant wipes, and free shipping. Free shipping's the best one, so you get money off and free shipping. Discount code to get you hooked up is new customers get $5 off a starter pack with the exclusive code BDLS, Best Damn League Show. That equates to roughly 40% off the starter pack. So use BDLS code at shopmando.com. That's shopmando.com. Right, let's get into it, Zaboutine, because definitely the LEC does need cleaning up, mate. Like, it is actually the messiest league in the whole world right now. Like, you would think of the other leagues, you still have, like, Team Liquid in LCS, you have, like, Gen G in Korea. Bro, as this upper bracket final, let's just start there. It was obviously the game everyone was hyped for, but, bro, it actually delivered for once. Do you know how sick and tired I am of Fnatic? In English, the saying is flatters to deceive, as in, they look like they're getting really good. They look like, hey, they're the only team with the force and the fire and the players, the names, Razor, Cumula. They're the only team that can take G2 on, but we all know it's not even just the story of this lineup. It's pretty much the story of the post-Caps era. They always either come that close and lose, or they just get blown out. Those are the only 2 results. I actually can't believe that I just saw a series where, 1, there's actually a world where Fnatic could have been the ones blowing G2 out here, and then 2, it was actually Fnatic that came through the really close series. So can I finally believe, Zaboutine? Is this the time? I mean, they've been saying it in all the interviews, if we're ever going to beat G2, it's now. If we're going to win the league, it's got to be now. Is it now? Can it be now? Can it be now? Please tell me.
I feel like it's a little overshot to think that they are like the best team they're currently the best team. I think that they definitely have shown that they have way more sports pragmatism, better draft, just way more win condition in their draft. And I think G2 is kind of going through figuring out how they want to play on this very new way. Like, the League of Legends that Freak has brought after MSI has been very, very weird. I think most of the teams in the world that don't have like super, super top-notch players really struggle to figure out how they want to play the game, and G2 is part of them. But I feel like it felt so great to see Fnatic win Game 3. Because usually, that's the scenario. It's like Game 1, G2 like smashes Fnatic, and then there is the Game 2, where G2 drafts something that's very whack and doesn't work at all, like very walking on thin line, and they just make like this one small mistake at like 7 minutes and the game's over. And usually they get their shit together on Game 3 and they smash Fnatic 3-1 or 3-2. And it felt great to see Fnatic getting two decisive games after Game 3. And we saw that like G2 struggled heavily to catch back on Fnatic. That said, I feel like if G2 stopped drafting really random stuff in the top lane and just play a little bit more with classic win conditions, I've seen them way more dominant during the first 15 minutes of the game overall in the series, which have been very like overshadowed from the narrative because people take the result and try to explain it. But if you look at the process of the series, G2 facing Fnatic and having these early game skirmishes, it's 8 times out of 10 for G2. The problem is they dropped the ball, especially on the top side, later in the game, or just BB just didn't play. Like, I mean, he plays very stuff. Like, that shit doesn't work, I think. I don't know. Like, I was... When I watched the series, I was thinking about what Dom said about not watching LEC. I was like, this is a joke, man. Like, why would they go for that and lose the series on being so stubborn at picking champion they're not good with, when you know that they could just pick Ornn or anything like Renekton for BB and just win the game, right?
You know, this
That
is
was
one of
so
the problems I have, Zaboutine. I'll jump in here. So what I'll say is this. I really did come into this episode after Fnatic won thinking, right, I've got to actually, for once, normally my mood would be, right, it's easy Fnatic, you can't win. Since it was a 3-2 and those games were really drawn out and it was hard work to win, the obvious angle I'll just do is G2 didn't play that great, so who cares that Fnatic won? But the problem is, since Fnatic never ever wins these matches normally, I do have to give them a bit more props. But even so, I've got to shade a little bit of hate towards G2, and it's along the lines you're saying, which is, bro, if we just take this VOD, I feel like this VOD review takes 5 minutes for the whole series. Here's all you do if you're Dylan Falco. You go, Broken Blade, whoever it was out of me and you who did this draft for what matchups and what champion pool we want for top lane, I wish we could just go back in time and just play the obvious meta champions. Because if he just does the most obvious cynical draft ever for top lane in this series, surely they just win 3-2 or 3-1. You know what I mean? Like, it felt like Broken Blade mega overcooked these picks. And then what he did with them in the game as well. Like normally people complain that Broken Blade gets carried or he didn't have... Bro, remember, MSI, he actually was looking pretty good. That was actually like pretty good form from him. He looked that if anything, he was the one with all the Rek'Sai picks and all that weird shit. Like, I feel like top lane is absolutely we got to start where this series was lost, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. And I think that the explanation for that is in scrims, I think that players have a certain amount of patience in scrims, and playing versus Veristop or playing versus this like marksman feels miserable as a top laner. And I'm pretty sure like a lot of like their opponents didn't respect the options of the marksman on the top side and were trying to brawl against them. They created massive leads in scrims, very successful, something like 85-90% win rate, which is kind of normal. If you play against a disrespectful team that try to challenge this marksman early in the game because they don't want to be patient, you're going to get this 85% win rate. But when you come on stage and you have Oscar that like has been on a weak side duty for pretty much 89-90% of the year, he's going to play this kind of safe style and say, see you in mid game, see you at 25, see you at 30. And G2 is not a team that's exempt of like drawbacks. I think that they have pretty poor objective contest. I think they strategically, I think BDS, not the one of this split, but the one of the two previous split, is way better at maneuvering around the neutral objectives. So you see that a team that has flows and has the habit of making hoopsies in games, drafting these like 3 marksman drafts and thinking that the enemy is just gonna bleed 5k gold every game was a little bit optimistic, and I think that's fake data. Due to playing scrims with this type of draft, that like there are champions that will give you bad data from scrims, and it's like Lucian back then, Olaf in the jungle, and I think this marksman top, the TF and the Varus are giving you exactly the same type of data. It's like, oh, but guys, we have 90% win rate with Varus. What went wrong? I mean, the champ is not a great top laner, guys. Like, it can work sometimes, but it's not. If you lose one fight in the game, you're gonna feel miserable for the rest of it.
I also feel like another reason to me it's a bridge too far. It's like, bro, we're getting games now where there's 5 ADCs in the game. Like, because I was saying this to Monty, I actually also find team fights really bad to watch in this meta where everyone has like dual ADC, like the mid and the ADC. Like, because the problem is I've always thought in League, a flaw the game has as a spectator sport. I've always said the reason Counter-Strike works in esports is you can actually be someone who doesn't play CS, but you can appreciate the basic aesthetic. In League, I always say, dude, even when you follow League, I've always said that years and years ago, people did that thing on highlight videos where some people would stop the action and highlight, this is who you're meant to watch the vein. And I always found like, dude, that's a million times better for like a replay. Because the worst thing about a replay of a team fight in League is, in the old 5v5 one, you at least knew, right, so I'll watch the mage when they burst the damage, and then I'll watch like the ADC to see if he gets caught, see if the team fight. There was like a logic and a priority, like a protocol you could put of who to watch. Dude, in this current meta where someone's playing like Ezreal with Tristana against fucking Kai'Sa, and like, bro, what am I watching? I'm just watching loads of people shoot each other. Like, this is really hard to enjoy as like a casual, I feel like. And it makes the team fights also, bro. They're so like... Fuck, the variance feels crazy in these team fights because think about it, your health bars are just going, it's just loads of people doing loads of auto attack damage. Like, oh, it's fucking bonkers. I find this meta really messy, mate.
It's not pleasant, and it's very curious because I feel like Riot with the durability patch last year or 2 years ago, I don't know, like the time flies. There was kind of a drastic measures to reduce the damage
Yes.
overall in a way that like burst doesn't exist that much.
Yes.
And since I think Freak went to the balance, I think he has reverted a lot of changes that went into that direction to make League more fun, right? I think the item changes early in this year, and now like the changes they've done to the marksman items and the return of the BF, 1,300 golds with like 50 damage on it, which was kind of a cornerstone of League of Legends for like pretty much 8 years from the birth of the game. And he went back to it, which I think felt great for most of the marksman player. The problem with that is you're taking something, a relic from the past, and putting into the game that has been drastically shifted in terms of tempo, in terms of mid lane impacts on the way we play the game, right? Jungle support and mid lane going to side lanes, diving. This is not the same game anymore. And this step back from like pretty much 4 or 5 years in terms of design has tremendously affected the way people play the game, because I don't think the mage items are like even bad either. It's just this way of like you buy 2 marksman item with a marksman and then nobody can challenge you is terrible for the game. And you start to see, right, if you look at the series yesterday from K-Corp and you start to look like even in China and Korea, what's happening is it's a lot of poke that's coming back. Why is poke coming back? Because when the damage is too high, the only thing that differentiates teams is range.
Yes.
And you start seeing these poke champions, like even Zyra is kind of a poke champion.
Sure.
So it's a lot of nuke and pokes, and it doesn't feel great to watch because whoever makes the smallest mistakes just dies, and these teams like get massive leads of 5 or 6k, and one guy makes a mistake and it's immediately lost, and then there's Baron, and the siege feel endless because ADC have so much AD damage, so they clear even though despite Baron. So the length of game starts to explode. And I feel like I understood that in June, right, or early July, the state of the game was this way. What I do not understand is Riot standing on their ground, dying on this hill of keeping these items with this type of power trough that's completely polarized the game and feels genuine to play even as a solo queue player. But watching competitive, I'm completely on your side. It feels miserable to watch because like right now there is the LFL playing, there is 5 ADCs in the game. That's completely stupid.
Another thing I wanted to ask, because we can use this G2 series actually as a great example, is I think an angle people are missing about G2 Zaboutine is, it's funny when people watch T1, they can immediately see, not a great meta for Gumayushi, right? Because it's none of his champions. Dude, it's the same thing with Hans Sama. If you think about what Hans Sama likes to play, the joke is, if anything, he should be on the Varus. That's like his fucking champion. But his bloody top laner's playing it. I feel like if you think about what everyone's loving right now in ADC, it's not really a Hans Sama meta. Like, I feel like actually that's an angle where if you'd asked someone earlier in the year, like, with no context, who's better, Hans Sama or Noah? Everyone would just say Hans Sama, right? Dude, Noah's actually sort of like thriving in this meta, actually. He's having a little bit of a glow up. I was kind of down on him around MSI, mate. Like, I feel like the Hans Sama factor's gone away a little bit. And for me, in G2, I have always thought of it as, it's obviously a Caps team, but then the other carries Hans Sama, clearly. They've always used Broken Blade as more of like a wild card element, or depends on the pick or the matchup. Like, people will know a lot of the times in lane, he could just cruise. They just had to be useful in the team fight. Like, I feel like once you take Hans Sama away, they get less powerful G2. There's not that dangerous a team. I'm thinking, whenever I think of the last 2 years of a really great game, unless it's a cap solo carry, it's nearly always a Hans Sama masterclass, 19 minutes, clean up a whole team fight or skirmish or something.
He's a laner. Like Hans Sama is one of the few ADCs in Europe that actually want to play the lane. They want to skirmish in lane. I think that like he's a Draven, he's a Kalista player. He likes to play on these champions that like get priority. And G2 special for the longest time has been very inspired, I think, from T1, which is get prio in the bot side, get something on the first clear of the jungle, invade level 2, level 3, execute the first dive, and then free the support that goes with the jungle and kind of take over the map with the mid laner. Caps is very good at playing around the side lanes. The problem is this has been become predominant. Every team started playing that way, meaning you had the prio on the matchup on the first 3 waves, and you would get a freebie pretty much in enemy jungle, right? The blue side going, and the jungle does like red raptors and goes to enemy gromp. And as a defender, it feels miserable to play, and you saw the blue side having massive win rates because of that. So what did the team do? They decided to go into swap lane, and then swap lane got nerfed to a point where now you would assume you lose around 500 gold and a lot of XP on your top laner to just play to swap lane, but still exist. And I think this is the first meta in the last 2 years and a half, I would say, maybe even 3 years, that mid to bot is not the way to play in League of Legends. And that hurts tremendously the playstyle of G2, that has this laner that want to play the 2v2 bots to free the support by getting prio and get the lead into the jungle. And no, it's not that. It's a lot of like chilling in the bot lane, farming your CS. The support goes immediately and leave the ADC in 1v1. You see supports being -3, 4, 5 levels behind the ADCs in this meta, and trying to play skirmishes around mid and top, right? A lot of like skirmishes around the objectives and the solo lanes. This is the worst possible meta for Hansama. He has to play these Zeris, these Jinx, these Caitlyn's, playing 1v1s, not being able to get a single edge on their opponents. And then I don't think that Hansama has ever been the best teamfight ADC in the league. He has been matched by a lot. Like in Europe, we have a lot of culturally very good teamfight ADCs. Even Kobe back in the days, like was really good at it. Reckless, like that has been the place. Like Patrick,
Kazi
is that way too, right? Kazi, yeah, exactly, one of the best. And so you're asking, right, to you have someone that's a striker, and at this point he has to play like a midfielder, and you feel like he feels lost. And I think that G2 now has to play around BB, but BB wasn't that playstyle either. And so that's why I was saying, with this meta, you clearly see that G2 is trying to figure out how to get leads in early game, because in terms of mid-game objective contests, you clearly see from this series, they're not any better than any team. The best in LEC, I would say, over the year has been BDS. Right now, they're kind of shit. Let's be honest. But over the month, I think BDS has been the best. And G2 is just, we go on Baron, and someone's gonna do something, or we're just gonna flip it, and that doesn't really work if you don't have your playstyle and your goal lead from the beginning of the game. And that right now, you clearly see that they have no idea on how to create it.
Yeah, all I would say to cap the G2 discussion is like this. I think actually, even the way they lost this series to Fnatic, it explains why they got to this point of making these mistakes and going down these weird paradigm paths. Because if you think about it, right, Fnatic still barely beat them. Like, one of the best qualities that they have, G2, is they can still always play from behind. Like, it never is the case that, like, someone has the 3k gold lead and you're like, well, that's that game over. There's no such thing against G2. They're always able to find a fight or pick someone off or play aggressive on a moment or trade on something. So you can see, I get the vibe that like they probably really never did have a scrim session. They lost guys, or they were always in it, or they lost a couple, but they knew the reason why. I think the real problem G2 has had is they are just shadow boxing themselves. Meanwhile, if you go on the Fnatic side, if we talk a bit about Fnatic, as I say, all past discussions of can they win the league were sort of a waste of time, because they could never beat G2, so it just didn't matter. But they've done it now. They have actually done it now. Now, even though there are still plenty of angles that you could probably diminish Fnatic with, there are some obviously good ones. Like, I'll tell you what, if you were going to change the meta to hurt or help a team, bro, this meta looks awesome for fucking Razork. He already was the best, in my opinion, anyway. He's one of the few people in Europe and the West I do trust to play in Nidalee, or to actually not fuck up the Zyra, etc. Like, dude, I actually think a lot of the... And by the way, Noah seems like he's loving this champion pool at the moment right now. It's all right in his back, but that fucking Caitlyn game, it was his dream. That was about the best you could ever hope for. What do you think of the Fnatic chances? Because in theory, we have to now imagine a world where it's not impossible they could do this again. They could win the league, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, it's possible. I feel like G2 now has real information on their priority in draft and the choices. They have one more series, and I don't see the winner of BDS versus KC beat G2 in a BO5 later on. Maybe, I don't know, BDS beats KC, upsets G2 because they find themselves back, and then you have the Fnatic versus BDS in final, which I think like BDS Fnatic would be favorite for. But I think that, yeah, Razork, you said it. I mean, he's been the best jungler over the last 2 years. I think Yike, people overestimate a little bit what Yike does, although he's a really good jungler. Yeah. But I think that in Fnatic, Razork is just finding all the leads in early game, and it's been the case since Misfits. Everywhere it's been, every laner just feels like they play better at the game. He just finds all these weird pathing, well creative angles. He plays carries, he plays tanks, he can sacrifice for the team. He's the best jungler by a landslide for me in Europe. And I feel like, yeah, and a lot of the bad things about Fnatic, which is I don't think Noah is that any not great in lane, and we saw it right during international events. Yep. I think that Oscarinin is kind of like in tank duty or bruiser duty. Everything aligns, right? All the planets align. So if G2 cannot figure out how to fix their approach of the game, and deepen less on the bot prio, and they come back and they still like play this weird range top, and they don't accept to kind of adapt to Fnatic's playstyle, Fnatic can take it, but I would still say like the odds is 70-30 for G2. Like, it's still a 3-2. It's game 1, it was a sweep, absolute sweep. Game 4 was kind of a sweep too. So you see, like, if they don't have the perfect, like, if the planet don't align, G2 wins, and I think it's pretty hard to do it twice.
Right, what about, you referenced earlier, obviously I want to talk about BDS, but here's how I want to set this up. It's so crazy the way like certain storylines just repeat. Because bro, I've seen this story before. Remember last year, BDS was one of the best teams in Europe for the first 2 sort of splits or so. Like they're really getting it together, they were growing in power, they reached their zenith. You were hoping, hey, let's see them go to, and then in some of they sort of went down a bit, and then by the time they got to Worlds, a lot of the sort of power and the potency was gone. Bro, I feel like it's the same story, because like, on the one hand, right, on all my shows, I keep saying this, I'll give them a backhanded compliment. I actually think this entire playoff run for BDS so far, in a fucked up way, shows there are some really, really core strengths to this team, because I actually think they've played every single series poorly, Zaboutine. Even that opening one against fucking, who was it, GX they played? Was it GX they played?
It was GX yesterday. The first one was versus MDK.
MDK was the upper bracket
yeah.
one. GX was, yeah, that's right. And then obviously they were trash against G2, right? I actually think they haven't looked good in any of these matches, mate. They've looked really whack. They haven't even been able to get like ahead. They've had loads of times where they were looking just poor. Even some of the draft choices were weird, but they're still winning the series, except for the G2 one. They weren't supposed to. They're still winning the series. Like, the problem is, obviously, this isn't peak BDS. It's like you alluded to. If you want peak BDS, you probably go last split or the first one, you know. So give me some thoughts, because I still feel like in such a messy league, dude, they don't have to get too much more together. If they just improve by 10% and get somewhere closer to what they were before, right now, if G2 is going to be like this, dude, the chance to win is right there. Like, even as you say, if they play Fnatic, everyone will give Fnatic the edge. Dude, they could beat Fnatic. They've almost done it a whole bunch of times. Like, I've always thought they were right there. Maybe it was nerves, whatever, in the past. I think Nuke maybe did fall apart in that last series they played. Give me some thoughts, because I actually feel like even though people understandably, justifiably are down on BDS, like, the potential is still there to be good. Come on.
Yeah, of course. I mean, it's... I am not on the side of the people who say they can't be good. I'm trying to be optimist for every single player and team. I feel like it's possible. If I were to be a league doctor and it was like, what's happening to me? I would say the symptoms are support underperforming.
That's true.
You see the engages are not as sharp as they used to be. You see that like Labrov choices for champion has been pretty weird. There was this game with Blitzcrank. Like, I don't think he won that game, but I don't think it was a great Blitzcrank game. So you see like it's a symptom of a player that's like, pick me my comfort. I need my champion.
Yeah.
I think one of the reasons they get taken on objectives is because the vision hasn't been set up the same way. I think that Sheo as well on some champion hasn't been as good, but I would say overall, Labrov has really looked like 2022, 2021 Labrov. And I thought he was like it was something from the past. Looking at him in January, you know, everybody was like, Labrov is really good. And I was like, I'm skeptical, guys, because over the years, he hasn't shown very like consistency. Yeah. And then Winter Split played amazing, good vision, good contest. Spring Split, amazing. I think he was one of the best supports in the league. Right now, I think Labrov is nowhere near like a top support. And if you look at like the 1-1 versus Alvaro in the series in MDK, wasn't anywhere great.
No.
Against G2, Mikix took the best of them. I think that Ignar played pretty well the series yesterday against him. So it's not like support is not a 1-on-1, but it's like the ability to establish a space for your team to play on. And BDS feels very random, and I think that's kind of like everything that happens to BDS, because you see that Nuke has been playing amazing with his Tristana. You see that Ice is on his meta, right? He's a hyper carry player. I think there is an argument for Adam not feeling very comfortable in early game. I would say that's probably the second narrative. But the biggest thing is support. And I take you back to 2016, right? I always take this example. You take like this Splice team that was led by Yamato Cannon, where he has Nisbet and went to the relegations, and then changed for Mickey X and went to Worlds. And it was only one player change. So you clearly see that like when your support is not performing, whether it's confidence, whether it's like just systems, just good habits, like the hygiene of playing at a high level is lost, the whole team kind of like crumbles apart because there is no information you can base yourself upon to actually make a play. So you start playing less proactive, and your opponent takes way more space on the map, and you end up flipping objectives. And you've seen clearly BDS doing what MDK, SK, all these like Heretics bad teams do, which is like, guys, it's 27, let's go to Baron and pray. And that's not the way they won. And everybody looks way more average when you don't have a good support.
Yeah, I think that's interesting, because I would definitely agree on the Lavrov point. I think what you're seeing now in like the absence of some of those qualities is why when this team was on top, Lavrov probably was their MVP. Like, he not only was mega as a support, like you say, he would find the picks in the game. So for people like Ice, he was just cleaning up team fights. And then also he was doing all the vision game. He's actually been pretty good at that for like 2 years now in the squad. So no, I think what you see is when that player isn't there, this team's like half as good, mate. And I'm also with you. I'll agree on the Nook point, because I always used to say in the past, one of the reasons why I was always out on Nook a little bit is because it just looked like in the past, it wasn't Nook you looked at. What you looked at is Shio, and if Shio was doing well, Nook's usually doing well. It was like, right, well, that explains that. Actually, Shio's not even that good at the moment. I actually think it's a pretty bad meta for him, mate. If you go look at the stuff he's trying to pick, like, it actually looks like Shio and Adam are both really lost in this like pool. They're not only themselves either not very good on the meta champions, or they're just trying like slightly off. Like, dude, go and look at the last 6 or 7 champions Adam has picked. It's like, bro, who is this player? Like, he's not picking the gods champions, and he can't go to the normal shit. Like, it's not like he's just spamming Renekton or something. Like, this is a guy where he's going like Dr. Mundo one game into Malphite in another, into a Rumble game, into a. It's like, I don't know, mate. Like, this just not only is it not working for you, but also remember, one of the things about Adam's style, which I always say, I don't think he intentionally did this, Zaboutine. I think this is where the coaching staff is very shrewd, is they understood that concept that unfortunately people on Reddit who play solo queue can never understand, which is if Adam goes in the side lane and he's farming a side lane all greedy, and then again, if this was like Adam knew, he'd be like, I'm going to tactically trade my death to draw enough people up. Now, I don't believe he's doing that, Zaboutine. I think he just gets caught and 3 people come and kill him. But obviously the point of that is, if you do it in the right circumstances, that's still a win for your team, and you can play off that. That's not even a factor nowadays. Like, nowadays, he just looks like he overextends, he gets caught, he's just not that powerful a player. And the problem with him before was, he was kind of the guy who put you over the top when BDS was really good, because he had these weird picks that warped the meta. People were really scared of what you pick into him. He would actually have, usually in a best of 5 or best of 3, he'd have 1 or 2 games where he just himself won you the game, or had like a really brilliant performance. I haven't seen that guy for a while this split, mate. And so when you think about all the players we're talking about, you only really have Nuke and Ice that are left that are playing well. And by the way, I definitely agree on the Ice one. That's one thing, again, I'll give props to the BDS coaching staff. Dude, I thought they had completely sort of, in English you say, gotten high on their own supply. Like, they were believing their own hype, Zaboutine, when they benched Crownie and brought in Ice. Because remember, it was okay at first because they just played to Adam, didn't they? So it was like, well, Crownie wouldn't have liked that anyway. Then the next split, when they were arguing their best, all Ice did is do a perfect impression of Crown Shot, but without the throws and with no attitude. And I was like, holy fuck, dude, Striker and whoever they are, whoever did this in BDS, you are a genius. Like, you were completely right and we were all wrong. Like, you actually did get a random Korean player who's just like a perfect plug-in player and just does everything you want. And he is, and by the way, what a consistent player that guy is. I feel like it doesn't matter whether BDS plays well or plays badly. The Ice guy just plays. He actually just lives up to the like cold as ice sort of vibe. The guy's just a fucking baller, mate. He's never going to be the best ADC, but I tell you what, his floor is crazy good, mate. This guy's just what a great workhorse player.
Yeah, I mean, I have a lot of respect for the BDS staff overall. I think they have made pretty hard, and I would say even above the coaching staff. I think BDS as an organization in terms of sports, whether it has been on Rocket League, it's been on like, I don't know all the games, right, as well, but I think they're good in like Air6 as well. BDS made pretty drastic choices at the UFC.
By the way, he meant Rainbow Six there when he said that. The problem is with that French accent, it sounded like you said air sex. So you meant R6,
bad,
Rainbow Six,
Rainbow
Six. Yes, okay. Just sounded a bit crazy. It's all good.
But yeah, Rainbow Six. I feel like BDS made pretty drastic changes, splitting the coaching staff, letting go of go to one, keeping Striker, bringing Ice in. And everything paid off, and I think their academy is probably the best CRL team of all time. Like, there is an argument for it at least. when you have the best academy and you're still like, although they're pretty bad currently, they're still like in the top 5, right, of the current split. It shows that like they have a pretty good understanding of what they're doing, and yeah, Ice is definitely. I think Ice is there is the discussion that Ice is better than Noah.
I think that's fair. Yeah.
There is a discussion for it that's pretty clear to me. I think the ADCs are never really well represented because they are like depending on the system of the team.
Sure.
Example is Karzi. Everybody knows he's one of the best ADCs in the league, and he has been not even qualified for playoffs.
No, exactly.
But at least he's consistent, meaning that if he is on like Zeri or Aphelios or Jinx or something like this, he's going to deliver in team fights. Positioning is always like very, very clear. Usage of summoners is really good. And he doesn't play too fearful, which is something sometimes I complain about when you speak about Upset or I speak about Patrick. They start to, be frightened because the team fight is not just like he sees these opportunities to actually flip a team fight. The best example is the game 3 against GX 2 days or yesterday, where the team fight was actually lost. Shio died immediately with Talia, and he was able to clutch a 2v5 with Nuke or 2v4, and they actually won the game out of that. So I think he's really good. But as you said, that's clear that Shio is not as sharp as he used to be. But I think it's a jungle support thing, and I think it leans more on Labrov than Shio. And there is the case of Adam. So Adam historically was a Renekton kind of one trick in the LFL when he was playing in Carmine. So he can play the Renekton, and I'm kind of surprised they don't have a higher priority for that.
Especially because every other fucker in West picks it all the time now. So I'm amazed he hasn't tried it. Yeah.
Yeah. But that's it, right? Like his Olaf, for instance, I think that when you're playing in the Antonio, which is arguably probably the player that has the most trouble in laning phase in the whole league, right? And you have this Rumble early game, and it didn't feel like they took over the game from the Rumble, and then he had this Olaf into a blind Ornn. So you know the guy is playing Ornn. You have the speciality of being the best Olaf in the region, and none of the impact of the Olaf has been seen throughout the game. I see him. There is a play where they're trying to contest the mid wave against GX, and he just runs through mid against Chuck for 80% of his life bar by the Lucian of Jackie's. I'm like, are you looking at the screen, bro? Or are you looking at the minimap, right? It's kind of weird because I know Adam is like able to produce better, but kind of on par with the rest of the team. It feels like they lost their League of Legends, and I'm very worried because of the whole chokers narrative. If there is one time of the year where they usually choke, it is right now, and all the signs, right, are converging towards a big fumble. Right now, like the KC storyline, right? We're going to talk about it. The miracle storyline of KC leading to BDS. Feels like BDS is not even the favorite anymore in this series.
No. I mean, we'll pivot straight into that. So, like, two things to say. One is, like, believe it or not, even though individually I obviously don't like personally certain BDS players, what people wouldn't know, Zaboutine, is I actually pull for this team because a part of it's like probably the influence of Monte Cristo. If you think about what he likes, is I do like teams that like do macro moves that make sense, that imply you understood what you were doing, and that was an actual decision, not just like a reaction, like you just had a fight and won it, you know. So I actually do always want teams like BDS to succeed, but I agree with you. Everyone's looking now to like what happens when they play G2. You know, they've never beaten them. If they can make it to the final, maybe they can win against Fnatic. And what they're missing is this. Right now, the only team that looks like it is massively improved for the whole of the split is actually Carmine Corp. And you have to always remember this, because they've only kept the bot lane, it doesn't matter what they did in the past splits. You can just delete that team. This new team is totally different. And so I know what you mean. If you look at how Carmine Corp has leveled up series after series after series, actually there's a world where they probably fuck around and could actually beat BDS now. If BDS comes with some of the whack play they've had in some of the other series, they're at least going to lose games. Like it's totally plausible. And again, here's the other reason why I'm scared, Zaboutine. Because if I look at Carmine Corp, I actually feel like Carmine Corp have done a great job of recruiting and band-aiding the team. Because, dude, as much as it was very easy to look at those players they brought in, like Closer and Canna, and be like, these are like washed players that'll never be at their peak. No, but here's the brilliance. You know exactly the one-dimensional way you want both of those players to play. And if you look at how they're drafted right now, mate, they know exactly who Canna is. They're not asking Closer to do more than he needs to do. Vladdy's actually even pretty fucking good for a rookie. And now, even though, look, Targamas is still in bot lane, so they're never going to be like a Hansam, a Mickey X lane, winning kill lanes all the time. But I'll tell you what, if you give Upset a Zeri or an Ezreal or something like that, and you give him a kill or two and get him into that mid lane, he will carry some of these games. If you, as you see here, he can carry some games. So the problem I have is this: BDS feels like a mess, whereas actually Carmine Corp, I think, have exactly the game plan of what they want to do. If it works, mate. I don't feel like actually this is. A lot of people are going to look and say, "Oh, you'll see the name BDS and the name Carmine Corp. You'll go, this is it. It's a best of 5. There's no way 3-0." I'm with you. I think this is what you call like a banana peel in English. Like if you fuck around as BDS and you don't pay attention, you could slip up on this one. You could lose.
Do you know who they remind me of? EG, the EG that was playing only late game. Do you remember this team that when they won the LCS, and you knew like it was with Inspired and I don't remember
Danny
like, the
and all those
of,
people.
like,
Yeah, Jojo Pion.
Yeah, exactly. And you know it was like Jinx, Lulu. It
Yep.
was very, very obvious. They would just stick to their guns. They would bleed even massive goal deficit. They would like be 5k goal behind, and then they would make it was a hell. It was a swamp. You would try to get the Baron and would defend and it would clutch it, and then the goal lead would not mean anything at 82k goal lead versus 81k goal lead, and then they would like clutch the last team fight, and they actually won the LCS that way. And I was a KC doubters because I don't think that individually the players that have aligned are like any sharp.
No.
I mean, especially Kana. I think that people had high hopes for Kana. I think being solo killed on a basic matchup by not Frescovi, Mirwin in regular season has had very, very poor showings. But I think props to the coaching staff. They've made the decision to go with a very pragmatic approach, which is we do not have the players to get goal leads. Therefore, we're going to just train every single day, losing scrims, build a goal deficit, and come back.
Yes.
And I think the stats, the KC fan told me when I was streaming earlier, I think they have a 50% comeback rate in
Dude, if you even look at that series they just played against SK, that series is like SK is winning all the games, all 3 of them, right? They're making all the proactive moves, they're getting all the early kill. But as you say, it's like Carmine Corp in MMA, it's just the counter puncher. They're just sitting back. And then all it takes is that one big fight. They just have to have that one fight where Kana has a Jace and he kills all the low health people, or Upset gets his chance to rush in while Vladdy is all doing all the damage. Like, it's ridiculous, isn't it? Like every game they have to come back, every game.
And they do it. That's the worst part is like they have to, right? But they do it. And I think what's very important in League of Legends is to understand that they are, and that's why I give props to the coaching staff, because there is step-by-steps approach of how to make the game harder for the opponent. I think like the best defensive game I've seen in a long time was I think it was the game 3 of BLG versus Genji at MSI, and you see like a massive lead from Genji, and like these guys are the best at their position, all of them, and it feels so hard to get a tier 1, and it feels so hard to get a tier 2, and then they go to tier dragon, and it comes to the last man standing, and you're like, but they have 3k 4k goal deficit, but they always play, put the vision, defend the vision, contest the space, create a flank, build a TP play. And I think that at least as bad as they are in the early game, because that's a fact, I think Vladdy is bleeding a lot of like gold usually in the early game, has been better in the series yesterday, but I think Niski played pretty poorly. I think the top lane Kana is not playing as near as well as he should as a foreign top laner, and I think, as you said, the bot lane is not the best in the league, but they have this pragmatic approach of like, it's fine guys, we're in LEC, nobody's playing well right now, everybody lost their macro, and they have a really good clutch factor, and I want to give props to Vladdy for that. I think that Vladdy so far hasn't passed in my mind the bar of like, oh, he can be a starter in the LEC, because bleeding gold in lane right now doesn't matter because of the meta. But if you go back to this Orianna Azir metas where like mid prio is all that matters and a bot lane that can snowball out of it, he might be in a big trouble. But this is something he can improve on. We saw Jackie's at the early stage of the year was nowhere near as good. So I have very high hopes, because at least he presses his button and he presses them well in team fights. And I've seen players make a living out of it. Like Power of Evil was just sitting in lane. The whole team is burning, right? How was his coach? Sure. The whole map is burning. And then there's one shockwave at 35 minutes. And it's like, guys, they won and stuff. And he's won EMEA Masters with Zenzara, which I don't think is the most oppressive mid-jungle duo in the EMEA. So that clearly shows that this team has something. And leading to the series against BDS, if BDS slips on a banana peel, why not? Like, if they win this series, they're in regional qualifier. They go in the season final. So there is a lot of stakes there. And obviously, hate it or love it, I think that it's good that KC has a run this year, because everybody talks about it. And I'm happy that at least some some of the players can showcase themselves, especially Vladdy.
Oh, yeah, two other things. One is this is also where, if you actually know players, they can be like mildly annoying, but you have to go fair play. It's like trash talk when you're a player yourself, which is because on this show, I've had to obviously like eat a plate of shit about Upset, right? Because when he was at the peak, I always said he was the best, better than Reckless, blah, blah, blah. But because he had these teams that were coming last, obviously everyone hated me. And if you watched, even though I could make all this case of like, he has no top side, his support doesn't talk, there's no shot call, it doesn't matter. Obviously, he wasn't having great games either. And I did point out, if you look at the bad Carmine Corp games, it did look actually like he had the curse of Reckless. Like sometimes he would play too scared, and as you're talking about, whereas instead of taking the step forwards and just winning the fight, he would be looking to take that step back so he wouldn't get in trouble and he could not die, right? And all I'll tell you is, this is where players are just always going to be like this, guys. Right after they won that series, he did just like DM me, like, was that too cautious for you? Was that too much passive? Like, whatever, bro. But I'm just actually glad that he can play the game and have the chance to win again. That's actually cool, because one of the things I do think people were way too harsh with people like Upset is they acted like because he was having bad splits, he's like broken as a player and can never be good again. Guys, the eye test on someone like Upset, and if you talk to any of his teammates, he's clearly a very skilled player. He's clearly, even by the way, he's got a really good like work ethic, and he's got a good mind for practice. His main problems have been things like trusting teammates, trusting the system, being willing to die and look stupid if you go forwards and you get popped in the team fight. That's why I made that point about the Reckless angle. I do think he's one of the few ADCs left who has that sort of thing in the back of their head of like, but if I don't quite like the situation though, I can always back out. And I always say that ended about 4 years ago in League of Legends. In the modern day, if you watch the LPL, the way you get out of the team fight if you don't win it is you die. That's what you just go in, you gale force in, flash in, and you just pray that your team does their job and peel. Like peel, that term by the way, which went away for a long time, peel is a big deal again for ADCs now. Like your teammates, you just have to trust they can do it, mate. So I have to say, like, the Carmine Corp works though. As much as they might have not individually, they're flawed players. I agree with you, but the composition does work. Yeah.
Yeah, and for as per Upset, you know, like stylistically, he's definitely not my favorite player because I think he's this type of guy that play Kalista in scrims and cannot execute Kalista on stage,
Right.
which I think is a fake data generator somehow. But I think that's the list of players that people say they would not be able to play good again is like so long. Like right now, the trend is like to say that Hylissang is bad and Karzi is terrible.
Oh, sure.
VTO is bad, but there was Bwipo and there was Alfari.
Perks,
and
a million players, like, yeah.
Right, the list of players,
yes.
like Niski at some point. Do you remember when Jankos played like ass because he had no team and he's a weak side jungle? I remember that, man. It was last year, right? It was like, and then they brought VTO in, and suddenly like he was a better player. And this year he was playing like ass, and suddenly he has Trimby and he's a better player. So you clearly see that associations and systems and coaching staff and dynamics and meta affects the way player can express themselves. But I think that people regard too much the very small elite of players that have not only extreme skill levels, but extreme adaptivity levels, like Chovy, like Caps in Europe. Yes. Caps is good no matter what, but who can be good no matter what? Like Larsen likes mages, VTO likes carry. Yes. They are not bad players. Niski likes to push and roam. But if you have a meta where you have to play Orianna versus Azir and this Niski versus Larsen, who are you gonna bet on? It's on Larsen. Doesn't mean he's a bad player. And I think Upset right now, the meta is less centered about winning the bot lane, as I said previously. He can chill 1v1 in the bot side. Targamas goes with the jungle. They do what they have to do. And then it's showtime at 15 to 25 to 30 minutes. And I think he really shines in that aspect because he doesn't have the stress of having to execute these very high skill lanes that he can play in Scream and solo queue that he has never been able to play in competitive. And you clearly see that with a good system, he's a really good player.
And then the last thing about Carmine Corp is this. I know that in theory, publicly, like, actually, Upset's gone out of his way pretty much now to squash all those beefs and imply there's no beef with Adam and it's all cooler. If he actually somehow beats BDS, I promise you guys, I will privately work on him and try and get him to talk shit. Like, because all it would take is one tweet and it would just reignite the whole drama. I would love that, bro. Especially because, if, as you say, the other angle that's also cool is everyone else who's good is already in the season finals. Whereas, like, actually, Carmine Corp, if they win this match, they get there. So this match for them is the whole season season for real. Like, this match opens up season finals, and by the way, with how the league is right now, it's not even like it's impossible you can come third and get a world spot in the finals, right? Like, it's actually plausible. Think how whack like teams like BDS sometimes look now. Like, it's actually, you've got like suddenly out after being 10th all those splits, you have like an outside chance to do some crazy run the worlds or something, which would obviously totally turn around this narrative of upset and Carmine Corp in general. So look, there's still a long way to go. They have to win a whole best of 5, so I'm not going to go too crazy, but I've got to at least seed it in there. Yeah, go on.
I'd love to see them in the regional final, because I think that's one of the small storylines. Like, we used to have this every year, I really love the regional finals. I think they should have never gotten rid of it. It was almost another playoff for the bad teams. It was the strength of the moment. I think I remember. Do you remember the 3 best of 5 river sweep from Cloud9?
Yep.
I think it was 2015.
Yeah,
or
the one where
2016
High was
one
playing
of the
all
best.
that stupid shit in the jungle. Yeah.
Right, that was one of the best like, comeback stories of like all time in the Western League of Legends, and the OGs will remember that. I feel like we've lost such a massive, because the problem with the finals now in LEC is like, the final is just, everybody has looked at on Worlds. Like, the thing that matters is like, yeah, you can win the trophy, but the most important thing is like, did you make Worlds? And it felt like, there was 2 happenings, the one to win the actual trophy and the one who lost the trophy. If he didn't have enough points, you saw him 3 weeks later on a different patch running the gauntlet. And if the team going to final was actually not that great and they could have got seeding or something, they would get smashed and they would not make it to the Worlds. I feel like we lost massive, we lost big time in this new format. I really liked it. And I feel like KC is pretty much the only like revival of this feeling of like, if they beat BDS, they're going to see BDS in the gauntlet later on. And so we're going to have this feeling of regional finals. And who wins LEC finals is going to be less hype as who make it to World as a 3rd position, which I think is one of the hypest thing in the year.
Yes. Okay, let's talk about some of the other teams. So, since they're eliminated now, bro, we've got to have a conversation about SK. I can't believe they did it to me almost every single split. Every split, I feel like they're like mini Fnatic. Because it's always Fnatic and SK in the BO1s always like overperform. And you're like, wow, is it for real this time? And then like, obviously, relative to their appropriate skill level, they both always flunk the playoffs, it feels like. Like, Fnatic never does usually challenge G2 like they should. And SK has done this so many times, bro, where you think, bro, they're the real 3rd best team. And the playoffs comes. And in the playoffs, no. And the worst thing about the playoffs is, I've got to ask you, because it's your boy. I have to flame your boy now. Niski has had something that's gone on the last few years, Zaboutine. He actually is clearly a good player. He's even a good teammate. Seems like he has a very great mind for how to play. But bro, he just has this thing where it's like there's just random moments in playoff games where he just blacks out and loses his mind. Like he's like a bad version of the Incredible Hulk. Whatever happens to him, he just ints like, you don't want to see me when I int. I don't know what the line would be from the movie.
He's a fake fluke.
Yeah, something just happens. I don't get it. He just seems to out of nowhere just blow it up and just lose the game out of nowhere. I don't get it.
It is very hard. So I have never been on the SK train, these splits. Everybody was like, SK is the best. I was like, wait a little bit, guys.
What were you skeptical about?
Oh yeah, the level of the opposition. Like it's important to me that the opponent is playing well. Like if the opponent runs at Baron and leave the Baron with 300 HP and dies, and you just like press smite and then you run mid and you just win the game, you haven't done anything in the game, right? So I feel like, for instance, a team that didn't win trophies but was playing well was like, I mentioned it, it's BDS. BDS, you saw there was system, vision.
Yes.
You clearly saw a chess game where the position won and the player executed the position to the point where they won the game. SK felt like they came into the LEC, which are the teams that are supposed to beat SK. G2, they play really bad the whole split. Fnatic, they had their bad runs, so they arrived middle of the slump and they played SK. Who else? Vitality. Don't get me started on Vitality. This is the worst disappointment of all time.
Yep.
Who else? Like BDS didn't play well the whole split. So SK found their peak of confidence in B1 in a league where every single team that's supposed to beat them were in the middle of a slump. And if you look at the detail of the game, there was nothing that was done against SK aside from there were team fights at neutral objective and just SK came close but above the opponents and they just came clutch. But never I felt like, oh, SK has this like play style that once they establish it, they win the game. There was a lot of like individual performances that were great. And since we know that Nisqy has this like kind of, it's like planes when they have like these holes and they just like shut down. That's really how I feel about Nisqy. And I cannot explain that. I think we've seen it so many times over the year that I think himself is probably looking at himself.
He
in the
must
mirror
be
and
aware.
like, what is wrong with me?
Exactly. Exactly.
Right? You have the "what's wrong with me"
Yes.
feeling when this happens. But once again, we have the disappointment of Nisqy with a team that plays around him, that he plays for the jungle, that looks really good, and the jungle support does things, and then it doesn't work. One thing I would say is these people, I would say Nisqy, I would say Elyoya, MDK, they're a little too aggressive. I think that there is this myth in League of Legends that to win, you need to play aggro. And I think that if you ask me, right, which league is the favorite of Nisqy and Elyoya, I'm pretty sure they like LPL over the LCK.
Must be.
Right? Because there is this like meet you at Herald 5v5, right? Doesn't matter if it's the right play, just meet you and we're gonna like sell that out. And he's really good in these fights in the first 15 minutes of the game. But then the game kind of slows down and becomes way more strategical and positional. And I think in that regard, SK has never shown that it was a great team strategically. Like there was no pushing your pawns and trying to create a position. You saw it especially in the Kennen game. I don't know if you saw yesterday, the Kennen flanks always felt off. They were felt forced, especially the Baron one.
Yep.
They create a flank behind the Baron, and then he flanks and kills, but they give the Baron, and you're like, SK, guys, hello, you were winning the game.
Yes.
So I feel like Nisqy.
By the way, I'll even emphasize that, bro. That was crazy, that fight. Another one you talk about. It's the one where all the Karmine Corp players are at the top of the Baron, aren't they? It's like, what's so mad is, it's like you do that thing where it's like that, that trade meme. It's like, I win the team fight, but I trade you the Baron. It's like, the trade doesn't make any sense, does it? I know what you mean. Like, they could have done both. They could have stayed on the Baron and won that, or they could have just taken the fight after. They did like the middle, the worst option of the two.
Yeah, because at least during the regular season, they would get on Baron and flip it, but they were better technically as a team. They were playing together. But here, it really felt like they wanted to play the BDS style of trying to create a flank.
Yes.
And then they were like, hey, coach, we created the flank. And it's like, but guys, the Baron is taken. Exactly. It's like, oh, sorry. Yes. And they were just running at a support. I remember they were like hounds after Targamas. And they're just like, oh, guys, the Baron is taken. It feels like there is not a single strategical layer in the way they approach the game, and that hurts them on the long run. And I think one thing that they have to correct, and especially Nisqy, is the hound mentality, which is, I see a target, I know I have the damage to kill the target, but should you? Is it the best play to burn your flash right now to get 300 goals, knowing that later on you might not have this resource for something that has a higher stake? And that's the trade-off that like Elyoya. What's funny, because they were both playing together, so Mad Lions really like this, but Elyoya and Nisqy have in common, which is a little bit too much the foot on the pedal in terms of like killing champions.
Oh no, the great irony of all is that obviously, if people don't know, that wasn't just like social media beef. Elyoya and Nisqy do not like each other and do not agree with each other on how to play League. And that's why there's that story from Mike Harsey interview where apparently in the winter split last year, they just lost like every single scrim, though, even though they made the finals. Like, they themselves don't even know how that happened. But the real irony, I agree, Zaboutine, is I actually think that's like some Kobe Shaq shit where if they could both shut up, they clearly actually play together pretty well, in my opinion. Like, they sort of are aligned. So I don't know why there's that beef, because to me, when two players get together like that, just stay together, bro. Change the other players if you want. Change Chasey or fucking Illisang if you want, but bro, you two had it. I thought you actually had a pretty good synergy, but for whatever reason, you have to be apart. Sometimes, who the fuck knows why? Who knows?
I wish Bo played with Nisqy, man. I really
that's the dream, obviously, in it. Yeah,
right. It's like it probably never gonna happen, but. Right, it's on my Santa Claus list. Please just bring back both.
No, I just look at this meta. In this meta, mate, it would be glorious. Think about this: you'd have Bo on like a Nidalee or something, and then Illisang could be a total maniac, and then Nisqy at that point just have him on his whatever TF, whatever the fuck he wants, mate. Tell him pick whatever you want, bro. Because yeah, these guys would just like they wouldn't even have to talk, mate. They would just all go in together. I feel like it's the ultimate team of just like we don't even need to come. He speaks Chinese, don't matter. Just go in when he goes in.
I'll buy the jersey. No matter who you play for, if these three guys play together, I'll buy the jersey. Because, it's like Brazil 1970. It's like win or loss, I'm not gonna pronounce it because my accent's terrible, but it's like, beautiful game. It's the Barcelona 2008. It's like whether you lose or you win, the people, you win the people's heart, because playing aggressive on the edge on the jungle is really good. But I don't think that Niski needs someone to play towards, and I don't think he had anyone, because Isma is not this player, and I think Isma deserves his position in the LEC by far. But I'd love to see it at least once. Niski, Iliseng, and Bo for the craziest possible. And you can ask Karzi and some type guy like Herit or Photon, and I will be the happiest man, because at least this team will lose at 7 or win at 7, but we'll have the craziest games.
Also, by the way, props to Zaboutine for what a base draw. Because when he even said Barcelona, all you noobs were like, I was going to say the one with Neymar and Suarez. No, he picked the based OG one with like Thierry Henry and Eto'o. And that was actually a fucking banger team. If you ever go back, look up that roster, boys and girls. And if you don't know that lineup, get in the history books, because that is a lineup you need to know. That team was a banger. That was a fucking mega team, mate. I agree.
I loved it. My favorite of all time. The team that won every single trophy in a year. Every single one.
Right.
That was crazy.
What about, we'll do the other ones quicker, but what about, like, one of the teams that I do find, like, interesting was, I was never actually that harsh, this split on GiantX, because I always said this. Earlier in the year, GiantX for me were in that Carmine Corp Rogue category. Like, oh, who gives a fuck? They're just not good, are they? You look at the roster, you're like, this is never going to do anything. The one angle that this show we have been obsessed with, because it's the only real angle you can get hyped off, is that, like, look, when you see that lineup, Zaboutine, unless you're very, very young and naive, you don't go, who is this, the Antonio guy? He must have a future. You know that, like, the joke is, it's almost like they just really paid him back for his service to the Giants organization by letting him have a split because the team was washed anyway. So that one, you already know he's going to be incredibly cynically drafted around, and he's going to play that one style. It's obviously why they brought him. Then you look, their jungler. I mean, a lot of us made fun of Peach, but it's like, who the fuck's this guy? He's another just whatever jungler. It's like, who gives a fuck? But I'll tell you what, even though I think actually the bot lane's had a fairly bad split, the one bright spot is obviously mid lane. A lot of people, after that winter split, Zaboutine, would have given Jackies the checker lad treatment. They'd have gone, you know what? Who gives a fuck? He wasn't ready. He's not good. Send him back down. Get rid of him. And, the rep would be ruined. Dude, they stuck with this guy, and he's already gotten better split on split on split. And as you see now, he can actually carry games against, like, Fnatic, etc. Like, this guy's no bum. It's funny because some people have contrasted him. I know they're scared because of what happened with VT, or sort of like, oh, but I don't want to overhype these players. Yeah, but the point is the talent is there. They are carrying these games. Like, I think this guy has a real future, mate. He's clearly going to be an LEC player in coming years, and he could be on a better team than this, in my opinion.
That's the best success for the organization, is you sign the rookie. And I think that's the best decision that Carmine did, is putting Vladdy. You cannot contest LEC if you don't have a top tier mid laner. And the tier list of mid laners is pretty clear over the years. You have the consistent winner, which is Caps, the consistent runner-up, which is Humanoid, and then you have a tier just below Humanoid of players that, depending on the system, are able to perform well. VTO, Larson, Niski, Nuke, and now you have Jackies, that I think over the three splits has improved to a consistency level and a clutch level where we haven't seen him in different teams with different players and different staffs, but his laning phase has been polished up to a point where he can consistently win his lane if he has the good matchup for it, doesn't bleed too much against the top players, even Caps or Humanoid, plays very well in team fights, positioning is actually excellent. He obviously will need a little bit of polishing in terms of understanding side lanes and movement around the map, which is something that happens later in your career when you're a mid laner. But he has all the indicators of a player that's here to stay. And I think that he has separated himself from the pool that's below this one, where you see Zwiru, Frescovi. I think Vladdy is still there, but he's improving game after game. I think Seiken was there, and if you take like the LFL, I don't know all the ERLs are going to take LFL. Riker, Chocolade, Shayek, Eika, all these guys could play technically in the LEC, but you know that this guy in some matchups and in certain playstyles would bleed a lot of CS or would lose lanes. Whereas I think that Jackies has ascended to a point where, like, oh, if he has his champion, he can carry the game by himself. Is Lucian, when he was 11-1 on Lucian in a playoff game against BDS. That's very, very impressive. I'm super happy that the list of good main laners is expanding this year. I'm very happy of it.
Yes. So, okay, that's like the main angle, in my opinion, on GX. Obviously, the Heretics angle. Zaboutine, I have to ask you a question because, believe it or not, your Immortals team, the one that had Si-Hassen and Smithy, is often been cited by Dom as he thinks that's an example of like GMing where individually the players make sense. It's just together they didn't make sense because obviously there was a lot of like weak side / support.
He's right.
Yeah, I mean, it's just true. I mean, you even see in those games. I've even gone back Zaboutine because I'm such a big Si-Hassen fan. And even though at the time I was getting mad triggered because he lost all the games, when I go back and watch, mate, there's times in these games where he's doing Si-Hassen things. He's doing like a brilliant move that could have won the game. But again, the real problem that team had was, if we use a football analogy, this is like having all these brilliant defensive midfielders and right backs and fucking a great keeper.
No striker.
No striker. There's no one who can. In this scenario, it's like everyone's Darwin Nunez. Everyone just kicks it over the top of the bar, off the set. No, they never hit this target because Heretics gives me that same vibe, dude. I don't think these players all suck. In fact, I look at them. Most of them could even still work in different teams. If I could take them and put them apart and do an exodus, I could make a bunch of other teams better. But bro, when you put them all together, they can't win these games. There's no punching power. Do you know what I mean?
Especially right now because it's a carry meta.
Yes.
You need your carries to carry. I think that's kind of like where some teams have shown. Like I think Fnatic is actually very happy
because
of course. It's meta where the carries need to carry, and I think they have good carries, right?
Yeah.
The problem there is so many similarities between Team Heretics and the Team Immortals that I was coaching, and I built this team, man, and I really felt like, by positioning well around the map, and I was a little bit naive. I think I was early in my coaching career. I thought that if the players are the right position at the right time, the outcome is going to be they win the team fight. And then we go on screams, so we have the perfect positioning, and we get aced. And I'm like, what am I supposed to do, right?
Sure.
And it's just because everybody was waiting for someone to be selfish, and nobody was selfish. Everybody was selfless, so everybody's looking the teammates, waiting for the first one to... So I think that it's clearly the problem of Team Heretics. They have 5 weak sides, and I said it even earlier this year. I think it is not a bad team, but you need carries. And it's very sad to me to see people like, I mean, Cadiz doesn't have the edge, but you have Handsome D, for instance, playing for BKREG, I think, at the moment. In mid lane, you have Rika in BDSA. I think Power of Evil would make this team insane. And I'm not...
Editor, that's the headline right there. The headline is Power of Evil would make... Team Heretics insane. Make that title because people will be like, "What the fuck?" Go on, they'll think he's picked the wrong year or something.
Yeah, but you saw him. He won the EMA Masters.
Oh no, but by the way, one thing I'll always say about Power of Evil, Zaboutine, is he's another player. You know that famous saying? It was what it said on the Oracle of Delphi in Greece. It used to say in Greek, "Know thyself," because that was the ultimate thing you had to do. This guy, Power of Evil, completely knows himself. People will know. I used to say it. That's why if you like Froggen, like I did, obviously you like Power of Evil. They're two guys who know exactly how they want to play the game every single time. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, you clearly see that's why I say, and I on my streams people get really upset because I'm like, yes, you guys are gonna give me shit for mentioning Power of Evil because he's an old OG guy, right? But he's beaten all these modern young rookies that play this modern, Zoomers League of Legends. He just picked his Orianna with Zanzara that just comes to the lane with Trundle and just press E. And they won. They beat all the teams in MEA Masters. That shows that sometimes the only thing is like, it's the 36-year-old striker that comes in the team with all these midfielders. And although he cannot run anymore, if he gets the ball in the right position, he should sit.
He's just the poacher or the header or something. Exactly. Yeah. No, the analogy, if everyone now wants to do the chef analogy, right, of overcooking and cooking. Bro, in this analogy, Power of Evil never tries to cook like some fancy, souffle. He's just cooking stew, but it's hearty stew every time. And if you like some meat and veg, he's going to have it for you every single time, bro. Nothing fancy, nothing crazy, but it's that nice shepherd's fucking pie or something. Yeah, exactly.
He does one thing, but it's Michelin star. And that's this team. Yeah, there is not a lot to say about it because all the players we know they're good, right? Trimby is excellent. I think right now the meta
still
is really good, exactly what he hates, right? Because he's a more range mage player, but we've seen some Bard games, so he could probably play that. I think that Jankos has nothing to prove to anyone over the years. He still has it, but yeah, obviously, if you give him Nidalee at the age of 62, he's gonna have trouble carrying. Wunder is still probably better than half of the LEC in terms of playing weak side and side lanes because he has so much experience. But then in the middle, you have Zero that's like, hey, dude, you gotta take us to the Nexus. And it's like, no, you guys have to do it. You're the OG. And that doesn't work. And that's very sad because I think that it is it is a terrible team to end up in if you're a rookie. And although he did better than Perks, and I don't think Perks played anywhere like anywhere what people suppose Perks should play at, right? Zero came into his shoes pretty good, but right now, at this time of the year with this meta, you clearly show that someone else needs to fill these shoes.
Yeah, this meta also hasn't worked for him at all. Remember, in that last playoff run, last split, he was just spamming his ear every game. Now you actually have, like, this is actually one of the reasons I think it's obvious why T1's fallen off. Bro, the champion pool in mid lane completely changed and got way wider. And now you have all these flexes. Like some of these players, you can play them like 3 positions, certain champions now. So, no, it's a terrible time to be Zviru. So, that's actually also why this lineup didn't work, Zaboutine, because the story was supposed to be that Zviru's going to be the carry, right? They're just going to play around him, this young rookie. But this is where people have, and this is a topic I did with Dom last week, but I agree with it in general. This is where what people have got to stop doing, Zaboutine, is that thing where, notice people always do it about other teams, not theirs. When someone like Zviru gets promoted, all the other coaches go, great move. He should have been in LEC years ago. And I'm like, he wasn't in your team though, was he, you fuck? I know you're still picking some old ass guy or some guy who never was. But you're telling me this guy was sat there, by the way, out in open. It's not like he was a secret. He was just wide out in the open for years. And everyone was waiting when he got, and in this scenario, this is my point. They didn't even promote him. They essentially just fired Perks. It's not like they said, hey, Zviru's really good now. He's better than you, Perks. So we're putting him in. Perks had an argument and then just said, get the fuck out. And they're like, right, I guess you're in Zviru. So you didn't even your team didn't believe in him. Because I have to say, this is an example of why it's so tricky to judge people off a small sample size in LEC. When it was like that meta and no one had any hope, he looked like he was pretty good. But then you didn't see what everyone hopes, which is the next split. You want this progression. You want the graph to go up, don't you? Whereas if anything, it probably went down a tiny bit or stayed the same, you know? And so you didn't get the development. No, I agree. This team's kind of just pointless in it.
I mean, it is what it is. I feel like I can't praise Heretics because I think they had a carry last year, and I think it was a lose-lose situation. I don't think that the gameplay system that Vitality wants to build fits VTO, and we've seen it. He looks completely lost.
Yes,
the way he plays, and he was thriving so hard last year. You almost saw Misfits VTO playing with Yankos,
yes.
And I think the only thing they had to do was to upgrade their support. Potentially even Mersa was doing decent, and just find a new top laner. And they wanted to like bring back the old guys that led their whole year going into shambles, and bring Kaiser when like Trimby was available. So they lost a split into the building. They had it like all the players that were required to be they were available and ready to play. And now you see that like none of these teams are gonna make it to Worlds, and that's very sad, because I believe that if you have, I don't know, like someone like Handsome D from BK Rogue and VTO, and you leave the 3 other players, this team is probably right now playing against G2 in loser bracket, because I don't even think BDS will beat them.
There's only one team left, but the reason why I saved it till now, because obviously their season is done, is because, dude, this is where every fan loved that Mad Lions angle for the winter split. Because remember, we all ranked them at the bottom of the fucking lists, and everyone had them 9th or 10th, and everyone said, oh, how's this team going to make it? Oh, nobody's in these people. And then after that one split, right, every fan got to go, you guys were completely wrong. Because remember, they were in the final. They even won a game off G2. My problem is this. One, part of why they were in that final is because Striker did wake up and go, Adam, get the fuck out of BDS. Like, that did help. That was no minor thing. Even then, I think against Fnatic, I think people like Frescovi had like games I've never seen them ever have since. Like, bro, they had so many things go right for them that one split. And that split, their system did work. They could gank in the bottom, get bottle in ahead. Suddenly Alvaro looks great. El Yoyo looks great. By the way, remember how much better Merwin was at the beginning of the year? He was like some revelation in top lane. By the way, his Varus was dope. He had the first Varus top lane. The problem is, everything I just listed is gone. It's all gone. Like, they're not ahead early. In fact, the funny thing is, as much as he was memed on, by the end of the year, it's actually Oni Super who sort of left. I feel like almost everyone else is withered on the vine. Like, they're all kind of whacked. Like, dude, this team ended up, funny enough, where everyone thought they'd start. They're just bad. It's just a bad team now.
And there's just regression to the mean somehow. If you increase the sample, eventually the average level of players are gonna showcase, right? I believe that Elioya is still like a much better jungle than what people think. I think he has the same drawback as Niski, which is he's too much on the killing aspect of the game. He doesn't think enough positionally.
I don't know
But
if you heard this, but isn't it implied in that team that he kind of gets like finals? He can kind of do what he wants, right? You know, in basketball, you see you've got the green light, you can shoot whatever you want. It's kind of implied that he gets to do what he wants. But I almost feel like the Niski example, maybe he should be restrained a little bit sometimes. You know what I mean? Like rein it in a bit, bro.
That's the only team that I see in 2024 diving without a wave crashing under the tower. Like I've seen that multiple times. That's a mistake that I would accept. Like it was already, I got mocked when I was working at Optic for my team doing that in 2019 spring. I think 2024, 5 years later, I think it's pretty basic that you don't die without a wave, because even if you kill, then there is no wave, so you have to back off low HP and you lose all the tempo in the world of 300 goals. And I see them doing because they see a champion that they can kill and just press their buttons, and that worked very well in the winter because nobody was daring to press their button. But once you arrive to the point where everybody is kind of aware of like the stake and the positions and the vision, and everybody has a little bit more polish and round game, they look pretty bad. I feel like Frescovi, Mirwin, Supa haven't shown anything particular after the first split. I would say Alvaro is probably slightly better, but I still remember that they got massively clapped by the old KC with Kalist and Targamas in the EMEA last year, which kind of shows that we are still speaking about players which caliber goes along the line of high EMEA to low LEC with peaks that can go pretty high into the LEC, but the consistency, the median is not there. Like they cannot, their floor is pretty low still. And these players haven't improved the way Jackies did, for instance. So I am very concerned about the project, because you say these guys are our first choice for this year. We really think these guys are going to grow together and they're going to find an insane... they're going to find this play style that's actually very aggressive, and they're going to speak the same language and stuff. And then you look at it and it just falls apart. Nothing looks great. It's just like kind of running like headless chicken, playing aggressive. And I don't see what they do for next year.
Oh, no, that's actually, I think, the worst thing, Zaboutine, is that if you look at this squad and the whole story of how, like, we took, like, the evidence and elements of Movistar Riders with the coach, and then we combined it with Elioya, and it all sounded so good. And, in fact, the way winter went, you would have said, hey, it plays like they're quite a coherent team, like, they seem to know what the game plan. That was so positive, because then you just think, right, which one player do I upgrade to make it better? I agree with you. If you had to say now, obviously, their season, in theory, it's in theory done, guys. They are in the season finals. It's just, does anyone believe they're actually going to run through that? I don't personally. I think they're going to get instantly banged out. So when their season is over, if you play GM for this team, mate, I think you've got so many hard choices. Like, the question is, at this point, who do you keep? Like, I assume you keep Elioya because he's your boy. Beyond that, dude, the list's pretty short.
Elioya?
Yeah, like maybe you keep Alvaro. Do you even keep... I don't even know if I'd keep Super personally. I think there's better players out there. By the way, I'm definitely not keeping Frescovi. And actually, even though I really did like Winter Merwin, I don't know, mate. From top lane, I've never seen Europe as that we play through top lane carries. So, like, I might go with a different top lane too. Yeah, I might just keep two players, mate. Which, unfortunately, if you do that, I think actually that's a big slap in the face to your sort of like past teams. Because remember, last year you had a championship lineup that you gave up because you wanted to do this, I assume, long-term project. And what you're going to do now is it's not going to be long-term. You're just going to kick this team as well. So I agree. No matter what, it's a PR loss, no matter what. If you keep the same team, you'll get flamed. If you change it, you get flamed. I think you're in a tough spot, mate. I don't know who you get.
They can do the BDS thing. I mean, BDS took 2.5 years to find their pace. I wish that to MDK, but I would say that for their first shot, kind of going, especially for these targets, because they were like speaking the same language and stuff, that starts to look like a failure of a project. When you look at GX, that was kind of ridiculous, and at least they have Jackies that they can either sell or keep, that I think right now has a value that's even above Elioya.
By the way, I would even say if they're them, why don't you try and buy Jackies? That's the sort of play you should try and get, actually. No, another thing I would also say as well as this, mate, another problem I have with this team is, like, let me think. Here's another problem. I also, if people don't know, that story last year I implied about Elioya and Niski. Think about this, guys. They were making finals, then winning the championship, and they still hated each other and didn't want to play together. Bro, is Elioya really going to sign up for another year of being like in a team that comes like 9th or 8th or something? I feel like he's here to win. I mean, I've heard half the reason why he even hated that Mad Lions squad is, remember, he thought he was going to be in G2. He thought he was going to be in Yikes spot, winning everything with 3 winning lanes and fucking everyone, the caps, handing you trophies every split. So I don't think he wants to have another year of nothing. Like, I think that's a player where he's at the point in his career, Zaboutine, where if you're going to become like legendary, now you're supposed to put a bunch more championships up, If you think where he is in his career, this is like the sort of time period when like Jankos was going to the absolute top of the world. So I don't think El Yoyo wants a year of like rebuilding. That's garbage for him.
I agree. But Razork took the spot. The guy who made the choice and who's working hard and showing improvement and consistency and difference in playstyle and creativity. That was El Yoya's spot 2 years ago, but I think that Razork has beaten every single odds throughout his career. Yes. I know he's ascending as the number one at his position. And Yike is immovable from G2, and there is not that many great spots to get because I don't think that BDS will change Shio, and then you get in team. So maybe you can go to Vitality. I think they still have good individualities, but I don't know what they're cooking with their playstyle. So I don't know. It feels pretty weird for MDK. I hope that, I mean, it's good for the LEC that the Spanish audience is watching and cheering for a team. Yeah, so I don't wish them to be bad, right? No. I was very happy for them to be pretty good, but the project seems to kind of not really end well. Like it's pretty hard to bounce from that.
I also just think it's funny that it shows how in esports and in life, it's not really just about the success of the team. It's about like what culture you make for your team. Because notice how people always forget GiantX in theory should have the Spanish fans, but obviously every Spanish fan's a Mad Lions fan. And then in theory, BDS could have all the French fans, but we all know they're just Army Corp fans. So it's like, sometimes even if you're the better team, you don't really get the fan base. That's just how it works, isn't it? Right, I've got one last question for you, Zaboutine. Right, I hate the modern way where essentially all LEC is just like you wait till the playoffs done, and then the problem is whoever wins. We're almost like Korea now. Whoever wins is the best player, and the best team. If we go back on the old system where you just do it based on the games you saw, for this split, if you had to pick your MVP, who would you pick?
It is probably the hardest. I would say Razork. I think Razork is probably, with all the data so far, maybe I would have chosen someone else, but I think that Razork, like, this guy deserves something at some point, man. Like, that's the player that did everything and had nothing so far. So, yes. If there is one player that I wish Fnatic to win the title for, it's Razork, because really his career is so underwhelming in comparison to like the consistency of play that he's able to pull. Like some pathing I've never seen in my life, not even from Canyon. Razork has pulled them and got a lead from them. And he just seems to go under the radar. People are just saying he's good, but I think he's exceptionally good as a player. And I really wish him to win titles because I think that a good place needs to be rewarded eventually.
Yes. I often say it like this. This year, the best player in the LEC was probably Caps because he just played so awesome and his team. But after that, the second best player is Razork for me, mate. This guy, forget even Joy, he's better than all the Jungs and all the other players. Like, this is one of the craziest one-win condition players I've ever seen. I agree with you, by the way. Some of the pathing he does is like when you have like a player in the LPL who becomes like the MVP from jungle, and they're just like, every game they just got the edge on you. They've got some unique gank path. They get a gank when there shouldn't even be one in that matchup. Like, it's actually insane. I'm with you as well. The sad thing is, people will remember when he rose up with, funny enough, Vetio in Misfits, and then he had the year where everyone flamed him and Razork and Humanoid. Dude, he gets better every year. When you look at the adding of experience, champion pool, style, now he actually is just a fucking amazing player. I'm with you. Like, he's one of those rare Western players that deserves to be considered like transcending the region. Like, this guy can go toe-to-toe with a lot of top junglers.
Imagine that you're facing Yike in the comparison and you still stand above him while playing in the Fnatic side. That's crazy.
Yes,
when you think about it, that if you ask anyone over the years, it's like the better jungle is playing at Fnatic. When you're playing with G2, you have 3 winning lanes every game and usually the better drafts. And it's like this time Razork stands above. So yeah, definitely the MVP of this split.
Yes, and I also agree because the problem is obviously this split's been super messy, but he's actually one of the few players that just keeps rolling, mate. He just keeps rolling about whether they win or lose. Just a fucking sick player. All right, obviously that was not Dom. It will be not Dom, but not this not Dom next week. But it won't be him. It'll be not him. It'll be the other Dom. So let's see who it is who's not Dom next week.